Oh no,
So
and I didn't want to pull. I just was curious about that. Now,
yeah,
guys, if as far as empathizing with where the protesters are coming from, we can definitely do that. I mean, I think it's first of all, um, there are a lot of people who think that white people are wealthy because other people are poor,
Yeah.
yeah,
right? So whites have very high income. Whites have achieved a significant degree of civilization, and that's why you always hear from poorer people, not and say here I'm going to just say poorer in intellect, poorer in. I don't just mean broke. I just mean you could say disadvantaged by nature, disadvantaged by circumstances, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
But whenever people look at the edifice of Western civilization, they say that was stolen from us.
Yeah.
It's mine. Welfare is Robin Hood for a lot of people, right? Welfare is taking back what was taken from, right? And of course, for a lot of Mexicans, I mean, the white conquest of southwestern states, right? California, a couple other states. Well, that's just a brief incursion that needs to be driven back, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the founder of we didn't have this at the time, and thanks for the very kind words about the presentation. But Mike should take the lion's share of that credit. But the founder of Judge Curiel's legal group, whites should go back to Europe, California to be Hispanic state. That's what he wanted.
Yeah, we read that. And
Yeah.
I've read other things that guy said, even worse things about violence, promoting violence, and it's I mean, what do you think about the double standard of how?
Well, hang on. Let's before we get onto that, let's
Sure.
just do a little bit more of the sort of understanding where they're coming from. So, because IQ can't be talked about, and by this I'm not talking about race and IQ in general. We can't talk about degrees of intelligence. I mean, I just did
Yeah.
a great interview with Dr. Dupe. He likes to be called, the guy who criticizes Common Core. And he's saying, there's this, everyone's got to end up in the same place, in the same. When I was a kid growing up, there were three streams. There was basic, advanced, and I can't remember, super or something like that. And, you'd kind of get channeled into one or the now. Whether that's right or wrong, there was a general recognition that there was a bell curve of ability, and you tried to identify people and put them into the right stream. And the top ones was, I mean, it's kind of Platonic, kind of republic, in the old republic of Plato. But there was this general idea that there were smart people, there were medium people, and then there were not so smart people.
That's kind of gone away, hasn't it?
And that has gone away. That has gone away. Now, even if we take sort of ethnicity and IQ out of the equation, that has gone away. And so, if you are not smart, if there's no general sense of the bell curve and no reinforcement of it, then what happens is less intelligent people tend to rate their own abilities extremely highly.
Yeah, well, it's
It's just
the
one of these
Dunner-Kruger
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who are bad at stuff think everything is easy. And so what happens is smarter people tend to have self-doubt because, I mean, the number of things I don't know is staggering, astonishing, right?
Sure.
And I know that. And I need to focus on the things that I can do well and recognize that there's not a lot out there that I can do well. Got a couple of things I'm good at. And so what happens is normally this, in a free market, this changes as a whole because more resources flow to the smarter people, which makes up for their self-doubt. Because they have more resources, but they have self-doubt. Fewer resources flow to less intelligent people, which means even though they're wildly confident and idiots, they don't have as much sway in society per capita. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point.
Good. Then let me see if I can do another one then, and we'll keep
please.
going. Okay, so, but of course with the vote, right? I mean, that that changes, then the vote of less intelligent, very self-confident people are they're worth the same as so it there's a reason it's in this sort of radical democracy that we have this one person one vote and some illegal immigrants one vote. That is something that has flattened out. This is why there can't be a bell curve, because as soon as you get the bell curve of intelligence, like we get the bell curve of height or hair or attractiveness or whatever it's going to be, as soon as you get the bell curve, then this radical egalitarian democracy starts to look really ridiculous. Like you give the same vote to someone who's dependent on the state, who's not very smart, and who doesn't ever read a book. You give the same vote to someone who's got, a PhD in political theory or whatever, whatever you can come up with that makes them more of a specialist. And that doesn't make any rational sense at all. Now, the free market, again, takes care of this by constantly shuffling resources to those who are the most productive in serving people's needs in society. So, it's constantly moving things around. And that's why you don't tend to get aristocracy in a free market. You get it in the in democracies and late stage democracies. You get this weird inverted thing where the least intelligent have become the aristocrats and the most intelligent have often become the slaves. It's this weird inverted pyramid.
And
because the least intelligent are using the state to hoover up resources from the most productive. And so it's bad enough when you've got, the pyramid at the top enslaving everyone else. But when you flip it, I mean, at least the first one is somewhat sustainable. The bottom one doesn't last for more than a couple of generations at best.
Yeah.
And so they have been told these. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention too is that less intelligent people are often highly sociable. Smarter people are often less comfortable around organizing, society, networking, that. And it's not obviously a one-to-one, but there's some relation around that. Smart people tend to think, whereas less intelligent people tend to have allegiances. And they have allegiances to that which is most obvious, which for many people is the tribe, is the race, is the country. And for those on the left, it's the class, right? At least that's who they pretend to have their sympathies with. So all of these sort of factors combining, this land was stolen from us, and white people stole stuff from us, not just the land, but the wealth. And listen, it's not like Mexicans don't have anything to complain about with regards to U.S. interference in their country.
That's true.
Like the war on drugs is bombing, used to. I mean, they'd bomb the hell out of, like sometimes with crop dusters, sometimes with more virulent stuff. They bomb the hell out of people's crops. And then those people can't farm. And so they got to go somewhere. They got to live. They got to eat. And so there is stuff to complain about. Like I've said this a million times before. The Muslims have a shit ton to complain about when it comes to Western foreign policy.
Well, nothing's black and white.
So we're just talking causes here, right?
Yeah.
So this massive interference in other countries' affairs that the Western countries, and in particular America, in particular in Central and South America, it's bad in the Middle East and it's bad there too. So they have stuff to complain about, but you have a whole bunch of people who are being told, and we know from the combination of European ancestry and mestizo, right, which is sort of the native. Mestizo is the blend, right, between the natives in Central and South America and often the Spaniards, but sometimes others. That the mestizo, according to the general measurements, are lower IQ. But they're being told that the rich people, the white people, stole everything from you. And you're perfectly justified in getting it back. And you're being told, of course, that the only reason you're doing badly is not just because they stole from you in the past, but because they hate you in the present. The white people hate you in the present because they're racist and they don't even know it and they have privilege and all that, right? So you put all of this together, and this, of course, is one of the basic, as I've, again, mentioned a million times on the show, that the communist plan is to rile up minorities against the whites, and then, of course, in the 1965 Immigration Act to change the source of immigration from Europe to basically third world countries because Democrats needed the votes because the evils of communism had been exposed and they couldn't really make a good case for socialism or communism anymore. So this plan, and this does tie into legitimate guilt that people had at the time about the way blacks had been treated. You know, I mean, the combination of slavery and Jim Crow and a variety of other things, I mean, was not good. It was all government programs. But rather than shrink the government, they tried to use the government to solve the problems caused by the last government program, which we never ever see, but there it showed up once in human history. Just kidding. It's everywhere, for those who don't know my sarcasm. So combine that. They deserve to be there. They can have everything the whites have if the whites will just go away. This is really, really important to understand, that this is the genuine thinking. That they look at California, and it's a rich state. It was. I mean, it's obviously been bleeding off a bit of human capital for the last 40 or 50 years. But it's a rich state. And it's a stable, relatively stable state. And the government is relatively not corrupt. And it's beautiful. City of Angels. And they look at that and they say, all of that is stolen from us. And if the white people leave, we will make it even better because we won't be stealing from anyone. And they genuinely believe that if they move, I mean, this is just a certain kind of mindset. It's a subset of this group. But they genuinely believe that if they move into the seat of power in California, they'll make it even better, even more fair, even more just. They don't, because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, they don't understand that in general, all that will happen when they get into power is they'll turn it back into Mexico, like all the way.
Yeah.
All the way. And in fact, it will be even worse than Mexico because, at least to some degree, Mexico is propped up by remunerations coming in from people earning and on welfare in America, right? Sending billions of dollars back to Mexico. Mexican government, I think, gets even more money. Mexico gets even more money from remittances from immigrants, legal and illegal, than it does even from the sale of its oil. And so, given the mindset, and given that Donald Trump is, in their mind, of course, a racist who hates mestizos and who wishes to round them up at gunpoint and herd them back over the border because they wish to keep, he wishes for Californians to keep the goods stolen from their people. I mean, you sort of put all of that together. They're perfectly in the right. They're only trying to reclaim what was stolen. They'll do a better job of running California than the whites. The whites hate them, and Donald Trump is going to round them up and drive them over the border by bayonet. And that is, I mean, there's more that could be said, but, you know, I want to make sure we have a conversation here. But as far as where they're coming from, I think that would probably be somewhere close to it. And of course, they've received all of this narrative over and over again from a wide variety of media outlets, and maybe their religious leaders too, I don't know.